Well, hello. My name is Candice Reather. I'm 26 years old. I just want to do a little intro. I came to Teen Mother Choices when I was 16 years old. I actually met Mona at my house when I was still pregnant. And my first time at Teen Mother Choices, my daughter was still in the hospital. And I've now been graduated from the program for 5 years as well. So it's kind of fun to think that TMC's been around for 20 and I've seen it, in my life for 10. Tonight I'm going to tell you the story of my life, the good, the bad, but most importantly, what God has done in my life and just how awesome God is. So I'm going to start with from small child till now, so bear with me. My parents had my brother Chris 2 years prior to me, and then I was born. My parents had built a house in Round Lake, right down the road. Some of you may know where it is. From what I remember, my parents, were fairly happy. They always struggled financially to make ends meet. But as far as I can remember, my parents always loved us and loved us the best way they knew how. And they loved each other. Overall, they tried to give us the best life and a good life that they could at that time. And so how I see God's hand in that situation is that God created my parents and brought them together by marriage. And God created my brother Chris and I through my parents. And God loved us. And he provided us with our food, our clothes, etc. My father had been in a van club since he was 17 years old. And we went to these van events, and anybody that was in TMC with me knew about the vans. It was my thing. But I went to these van events at least once a month, anywhere from 3 to 10 days at a time. Most of my favorite childhood memories came from these, driving to Colorado, hanging my head out the sunroof. That was before they had child safety laws. And we traveled in large groups of people. Sometimes there'd be like 50 vans in a row, and it was just really cool to me. But now looking back, I realize how the van show, winning the trophies for whoever had the best van, the games, the bands, and the campfires were a really good cover-up for a long party all weekend long. Realistically, I grew up around a lot of drinking, smoking, and drug use. At this point, my home life was okay, but my parents began to fight a lot, more often than not, actually. And in this time, my brother and I, Chris, we became two peas in a pod. As far as we were concerned, that's all we had was each other. So how I saw God's hand in this situation is that God was so awesome that even though I didn't know him at this point in my life, he protected Chris and I from all the dangerous situations at those van events. God also grew a bond between Chris and I that was so special. So when I was 7, I had a friend that had brought me to church that lived across the street from me. And that day in Sunday school, the teacher somehow knew that there was something going on inside of me and asked me if I wanted Jesus to live in my heart. And I was like, well, Jesus seemed like a nice man. It couldn't hurt, right? But then the teacher told me something that I've grasped my whole life. She told me, no matter what happens, remember that God will never give you what you cannot handle. God gave himself to me to hang on to because my family started to fall apart. So when I was 9, I was so tired of the holes in the wall, the screaming, and the sleepless nights, and the many tears Chris and I felt. We felt like we no longer mattered to our parents because with everything going on, all we had was each other. We also realized that the rest of the world, to the rest of the world, our family looked normal. Everybody thought everything was perfect. I always struggled in school because it was difficult. It also had a lot to do with the stability in my home. Chris and I began falling into a depression. We started getting into trouble. We were like partners in crime. At one point, my parents said I could not hang out with my brother. And I would go over to a place and call my mom to check in. No, I'm not with Chris. And then go ride my bike over there and go hang out with him again. Needless to say, we lost respect for our parents, which isn't a good place to be. The only way Chris and I knew how to deal with the pain was the way that we saw growing up. So we began to smoke and drink. My juvenile record started in 5th grade. And I continued to get in trouble at a very rapid pace from that point forward. That year is when I felt like life was just too heavy to carry, that I was not sure how I was going to go on, but I remembered that that woman told me no matter what, God would not give me what I couldn't handle, even though it felt like I was there. This lifestyle over time put me in the wrong place with the wrong people in very dangerous situations. I endured traumatic experiences that I don't wish for anybody to have happen. And it took everything from me. I eventually started losing my self-worth, the respect for myself, and my identity into just the drugs, and then there was shame and pain of the memories of choices that I had made. It was like a downward spiral. I could not bear to be sober anymore. I had no one to tell and no one to comfort me. So then I continued to find myself in the same situations time and time again, and it caused many wounds. But once again, I can look back and see God's hand in this situation. God allowed me to go through some really bad stuff that I don't wish, like I said, upon anyone. I thought that I would never heal from the trauma, but now looking back, I see although my many bad things did happen, He spared me from many other bad things that could have been worse. I still had my brother, my parents, food to eat, clothes to wear, and I had what I needed to survive at that point in my life. And whether I realized that I had Jesus in my life or not, and at that point I hadn't, but He was there. The years passed quickly. The various drugs, parties, and arrests came along with it. By this time, there was no words to explain how bad life at home had gotten. My brother had left, had one child already, moved out of state. I was so angry, and I was so mean. I did not love anyone or anything. I didn't want anything to do with anybody. Sometimes I just wanted to die, and sadly, there were times where I almost did die. The summer of my freshman year was the worst partying that took a toll on me. I was skin and bones. I never came home for weeks. My parents never called to check on me. And I was never sober. And then second semester of my sophomore year, I ended up pregnant. And I was like, oh man, everybody's like, you're never going to be a good parent. I'm like, well, my boyfriend, my daughter's father, suggested that I have an abortion. And to this day, it amazes me the words that came out of my mouth, being that God was not a part of my life at that time. I just looked at him and I said, God created children for a reason. They are not to be killed, and God will never give me what I cannot handle. So stay or leave, I'm having this child. I knew that my child was a gift from God. God was getting my attention. My choice to have sex outside of marriage had many consequences. I had to go to school, work 2 jobs, and be a mom at 16, some of them which I am still working through. My heart had to be healed, and there are still wounds. I don't have my college degree yet, although I did finish cosmetology school. I was there. One of the reasons I haven't decided to go to college because I can't figure out what else to do because I enjoy what I do. I work every day to make ends meet. Let's see. And then one of the consequences that is a positive is that I was involved in teen mother choices. During this time, I became a Christian in 2001. And this was after 2 years of trying to figure out why they loved me. It was very difficult to comprehend, considering I've never had been loved in that way before. My walk with the Lord was very bumpy. I had a relationship with a man that was not saved. Therefore, I did not have a Christ-honoring relationship. I fell back into my old ways, and about a year later, I realized how miserable I was without God in my life, and that I truly desired a relationship with Christ more than anything else in my whole life. I knew that I had to end all the relationships in my life that caused me to stumble spiritually, which meant even sometimes my family, all of my friends, including that boyfriend. And then just the, reflecting back, what a lifestyle of fighting drugs, and sex, what did it get me? It got me a damaged heart, shame, and anger. I was lost. I lost who I was and gave the most precious things of me to people who didn't care and that it was not meant for. I lost my brother to a drug overdose 2.5 years ago. He left behind 3 children. I just wanted to say that, even though God saved me while I was in my sin of sex and drugs, don't ever think that it is okay to fall into these same sins. It didn't just start with one joint or a kiss or whatever that sin may be in your life. It started when I didn't have a plan and I didn't know how to trust God. When I was introduced to Him when I was 7, I was never taught how to live the Christian life, so I did what I thought was right. And just the example of what God does with some people's sin and others. And even though I lost my brother, he was a believer, but addiction had come back into his life and had a tight grip on him. Both Chris and I thought that, it would just be one time, or we would both be standing in this place saying how good God was. But Chris also experienced that in his life. But I just want to once again tell you how I see God's hand in all of that. I see how I caused God to grieve, and God never gave up on me. He extended His forgiveness that no one else has ever given. He healed my many wounds. He taught me how to love. He changed me. I'm not who I once was. He restored my heart. He restored my purity. He brought beauty out of my sin. He gave me a beautiful daughter, Sage, and He is allowing me to use my past to advise, help, and teach. Different people that I've come across to teach them how to avoid the choices that I had made. He saved me from destruction and death. He gave me a burning desire to seek and know Him. He filled me with His Holy Spirit that now I can understand and acknowledge that He is holy. He taught me how to trust Him and that His plan is perfect for me. I now strive for holiness and not wickedness. I live for Him, and He is my Father, my discipliner, my Lord, and He is my Savior. My walk with the Lord has been continually growing, and I honestly can say I don't know where I'd be without my 5 years in Teen Mother Choices. I'm so thankful that God used this ministry to bring me to Him, and only God knows if I would have known Him otherwise. And so I just want to thank everybody that has been a part of Teen Mother Choices, and to encourage all the teen moms that are going through, and to know that you're in a good place and that God will always take care of you.